Okay, today we're going to talk about global delusion. I don't know what else to call it. It was, again, another one of those weeks where I sit down and I actually did a lot of work early in the week this week about what I wanted to talk about. And it just seems like things keep building and building and building and moving more and more quickly as we get closer to when I have to do this, to when I do this each week. And each week, I will confess to you, I'm disturbed by what I see going on in the world. It can be very depressing. Things are happening so fast. They're happening on so many different levels. We talk about this, how everything is converging. All of these things that we're going to see happen in the future, the stage is being set for all of those to come about in very short order. The wars of the end times that the Bible talks about, the global delusion that the Bible talks about, it will reach a peak. And as we get closer, the acceleration of things happening is going to really be pretty dramatic, even more dramatic than it is right now. Now, in 2 Thessalonians 2, it talks about falling away that takes place, 2 Thessalonians 2:3. Paul says that, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition." Now, there's a lot of controversy about how do you interpret that verse. And I think the apostasy that's talked about there, the falling away, means a falling away from the faith in one sense. I think it means a general falling away from God's plan in society and culture in general. I don't accept some interpretation that the apostasy there is referring to the rapture. I just think and we can do a whole teaching on that, but there's a lot of reasons why I think that that's not the rapture that's being talked about there. And I don't think it's a very good interpretation of the Greek, because it was written in Greek, not English. But I don't want to get into that. But we do know, and later in 2 Thessalonians 2, it also talks about great delusion. That's going to be, God will send delusion on the world. And we see that in Romans chapter 1, that God sends the inability to reason on people because it's a judgment of God. And so God sort of says, okay, you don't want to believe what I said, I'm going to really turn you over to a depraved mind, and you won't be able to think rationally. And I think we see that a lot. But know that we're not at the peak of that problem yet. In fact, it was 2 years ago, this Sunday, the last Sunday in June, that I talked about the Obergefell decision that legalized same-sex marriage in the United States. Now, what do we know? Did it stop there? No. Has it accelerated far beyond that to the point now where people that oppose same-sex marriage said this is a very slippery slope. These are secular, non-Christian people that said this, that it won't stop there. And we should have known that the activists would not have stopped there because of the initials that they used, LGBT. They were giving us a roadmap as to what they were going to do. And they were going on to the Transsexual Agenda. And so hardly anybody talks about Obergefell now. And look, as a practical matter, the Obergefell decision, absent a constitutional amendment being enacted in the United States, we're going to live with same-sex marriage. It's not going away. The president can't do anything about it. It has to be Congress and the states enacting a constitutional amendment. That's how it's going to happen. Even if a new Supreme Court, I'll talk about in just a minute, is reconstituted and they overturn Roe versus Wade, that doesn't end the fight. That doesn't make abortion illegal. It has to be fought then on every state by state. And there's some states here that are not going to do anything to make abortion illegal. California and New York in particular. In fact, I heard somebody say, I have to verify this, so this is John just quoting somebody else, and John hasn't had time to verify it, but that if you took LA County and 4 of the 5 boroughs of New York, Bronx, Manhattan, Queens, and Brooklyn, Trump won the majority of the votes in the election. Just 2 little pockets. Now, does that make it seem like the Founding Fathers of the United States had a pretty good reason for putting in the Electoral College? I mean, do we really want, no offense to my friends who live in New York and LA, do we want New York and LA determining the direction of the country? They already are in many respects, financially and culturally. But there was a slippery slope with Obergefell, and boy, have we seen it come to fruition in just 2 years, to the point where there are schools, Charlotte, other places, telling teachers, you can't call boys and girls boys and girls. In Canada, they're enacting a law. It's in process. They're enacting a law where they want to be able to say that it's a hate crime if you don't use the pronoun that somebody else wants you to use and you offend them. It's insanity. But remember, LGBTQIA+, whatever they're using now, they're not done. And the reason I'm concerned about it is this tears apart the fabric of society when people don't even know what sex they are. But to go into a public place and say that in a government body or something like that, what would happen to me or anybody else? Watch what happens to people when they bring this subject up. In Canada, they want to put you in jail. And you'll see in a minute, they want to bring that here in the United States where we have free speech. To give you an idea how things accelerate, I just saw this. I thought this was this is how my mind works. I saw this, how iPhone decade reshaped Apple, and I thought, boy, that'd be really good for a prophecy update. That's how my mind works. Why? Because I see one line going up really, really quickly. And so these are major products and how long it took them to get to 1 billion, or the peak, how many units they've sold. So down here you see PlayStation, about 400 million, Nintendo, Barbie dolls at 1 billion. But look how long on the scale at the bottom it took Barbie to get from 0 units to 1 billion units. It took almost 50 years. Apple achieved 1.2 billion units sold in just a few years for the iPhone. And this is the way the Toyota Corolla, I mean, after 50 years, it's the most popular car ever sold. Truth be told, I have sort of a Toyota Corolla. It's called a Prius. It's just fancied up a little bit with some technology. But every now and then I'll see the front end of one going by and think, oh, that's a Prius. No, it's a Corolla because it looks the same. So I think they're using the same car. But they're way down here, they're like 50 million units or something like that after 50 years. The Zippo lighter is only at 600 million units after 80 some years. But Apple did it in about 3 or 4. This is the way it goes with prophecy too. Things really, everything's going along, then all of a sudden the curve jumps up. And I had a great chart, but I cannot find it, that shows this with a lot of things that happened during the Obama administration: national debt, spending on health care, on and on. I mean, the lines just go straight up, exponentially. So it's going to happen with Bible prophecy as we get closer to the end. It's going to be this exponential increase. And you're going to see this exponential increase with a lot of things. Here's an example. In China, a quantum leap. China's making some great strides, unfortunately, in military technology, hypersonic missiles. I think Russia's also doing some things with almost hypersonic torpedoes that really sort of neutralize our naval superiority. And it's things we ought to be concerned about. And our military, I saw some interviews this week, is in really not a great state right now. We've been at war for 15 years. And I think it was Mattis, or maybe it was Jerry Boykin talking on a program. It's like, our equipment's worn out. It's been used in war and rough terrains and stuff for 15 years. And we haven't been replacing it. And then when we leave a place, and we can see what happened with ISIS, we just take off and leave things in Iraq because it's too expensive to ship them home, and then somebody else uses them. And they've gotten some really good older military equipment, but still military equipment. Now, China is also doing things with quantum computing. The description that somebody used for me, I saw a technology talk about it, is that in computers, heretofore, we've been using 0 and 1 for the numbers, to the way we put the computer code to tell when to turn on and turn off. And you've seen what's happened with computer technology and the exponential increase. I think Moore's law says it doubles every 2.4 years or something like that. And that's held pretty true for 4 decades, roughly. I mean, look, we all remember our first computer, right? I remember my first desktop PC, 1993, 24 years ago. And it was an amazing machine. It was a 386 processor. It had 2 megabytes of RAM and a 40 megabyte hard drive. Our whole network of over 100 computers, I was the head of the tech committee for a while at this law firm. You know, we had over 100 PCs in the firm, 1 laptop, which usually was in my office, by the way, much to the chagrin of other people. But I was, I don't say I was selfish. I was making them a lot of money with that laptop, making us a lot of money. Our whole network had just barely over a gigabyte of storage space. You know, now I have a computer with 16 gigabytes of RAM and a 500 plus gigabyte hard drive, which, by the way, is very, very full. And you may see a message. I keep getting these messages. I've been trying to get some storage options, and now I'm getting messages that I'm running out of disk space. And I knew that. You don't need to tell me that. I'm trying to fix it. Quit reminding me. And but in quantum technology, instead of thinking of 2 points, a 0 and a 1, think of a globe, and every point on the globe is something you can turn on and off. And that's the power of quantum computing. And it's 100 million times more powerful than what we've got. And China's making strides in it. Other people are making strides in it. There's a lot of research going on. And it's a game changer. Virtual reality. And it's going to be used for good, but it's also going to be used for evil. You just need to be aware of that. So let's look at a few things that are going on in the world today. The Supreme Court. Now everybody's saying that, oh no, Donald Trump's going to get another appointment to the Supreme Court because Justice Kennedy is going to resign. And in this morning's Washington Post, there's an editorial by Ruth Maurer, the terrifying and terrible prospect of Justice Kennedy retiring. And she says, well, it'll just be terrible because, you know, I mean, Kennedy's been the swing vote on all these things, the overturning of the sodomy laws, same-sex marriage, on and on. And my view on it is good riddance. Go home, okay? He was a Reagan appointee, by the way, I believe. He may have been, I think he was, 30 years ago. And so listen to this. Another nominee, Damian Schiff, nominated to the Court of Federal Claims, used a different blog. She said, this is why Trump can't appoint somebody else. Look at what happened. He appointed somebody to the Court of Federal Claims, used a different blog to denounce anti-bullying efforts for teaching gayness in public schools and to criticize the court's ruling in Lawrence versus Texas. That's your ruling, Justice Kennedy, striking down state laws criminalizing homosexual sodomy. She's writing this as an editorial as a personal note to Justice Kennedy. Please don't resign. Now, he hasn't announced he's going to resign, but he was scheduled to have a reunion of all of his law clerks next year, next June, after the Supreme Court term ends. But he moved it up to this year. And so people who watch these things are saying, uh-oh, that means he's leaving, because he's having the reunion now before he leaves. Oh, and also to observe, it says, and it would seem that Justice Kennedy, and please excuse the language, a judicial prostitute selling his vote, as if it were, to 4 other justices in exchange for the high that comes from aggrandizement, power, and influence, and the blandishments of fawning media and legal academy. Justice Kennedy, does the president who chose this man really deserve to name your replacement? And my answer is, yes, he does. Please do it. Washington Post, I could talk a lot about this. Front page of the Washington Post this morning, Obama's secret struggle to retaliate against Putin's election assault. And this thing goes through timeline. It has this massive timeline. You can find it online, and it's much longer than what's there. And it goes through all these different events about the CIA reported it to Obama, and nobody believed it. They had trouble getting Obama to do anything about it. And then all the way through, it has all of these little things about Jeff Sessions met the Russian ambassador at the Mayflower Hotel. But there's nothing else there. It's like, you see what this is? This is like a roadmap for the Mueller investigation. Although I do cherish this picture as one of my favorite pictures from the last election cycle. The White House staff being informed that Hillary was not going to be president. It's and I love the way they photoshopped this and sort of I don't know, maybe I could retire if I could figure out a way to sell that and put it in people's walls. This is in the Edmonton. It is a follow-up on the Christian school, Battle River, Alberta, Canada, about they want to ban Bible verses. It's a Christian school, and it's not independent. It's part of the school district, which is probably a problem. But the school district is coming in and saying you can't. 2 of the verses they say, or 6 of the verses, 1 Corinthians 6:9 through 11. Neither be not deceived, neither fornicators, adulterers, nor effeminate, nor abusers of themselves with mankind, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunk. That's offensive. And so the head of the school district, and backed up by the school board, has said you can't use that verse in your school because our local governmental laws prohibit hate speech and offensive speech. And the other is Galatians 5:19 through 20. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revelings. Telling people that those are bad is offensive, and you can't say it. So do we want drunkenness? Do we want revelings? Do we want murders? Do you understand how far the secular world has gone down the delusion path. And we're not there yet. And so I think that the apostasy in 2 Thessalonians 2:3 is not just a falling away from the faith, but I think it's just a falling away from general societal norms and guidelines. I think it's probably broader than just the faith. And it's happening. Every day we see more and more. Somebody sent me this morning. They were down. You see here, it's an electronic signs. It says LGBT pride. I see him sitting in the back. Thank you. And where's this taken at? It's the entrance to Fort Knox, Kentucky, to the Army base. LGBT pride. How about American pride? How about Constitution pride? No, we got to do this. And you see the agenda there. They just lopped off a few letters. This attack on speech is happening everywhere. This report, police across Germany raid homes of people who posted offensive comments online. Because that's really the biggest problem in Germany, where they brought in 2% of the population in immigrants that don't share any of their values. Look, we don't know what German values are. Here's a value, sort of a guiding principle of life, I heard somebody say this week. Germany is usually wrong. Okay, so that's, and I thought that was pretty good. It should be absolutely apparent that free speech is dead in Europe if it ever existed at all. While a man in Scotland faces a year in prison for an offensive YouTube video, and British police scour social media for xenophobic responses to terror attacks, things are not much better on the mainland. Today, German police conducted nationwide raids on citizens who posted offensive comments or participated in online hate groups. This is the second annual day of action against hate posting. But it would never come to America, right? We're safe. This is in England, Cheshire Police on their blog. We would remind all that they've posted this. This is like in the midst of terror attacks in England, in Great Britain, the Cheshire Police have to post this because, you know, would you help us if you know a terror cell or something that's people are acting weird and they might do a terror attack? That would be a great thing for the police to post, right? Here's what they posted. We would remind all social media users to think carefully about what they are saying before posting messages online. Although you may believe your message is acceptable, other people may take offense. And you could face a large fine or up to 2 years in prison if your message is deemed to have broken the law. And then they go on with a bunch of guidelines. We see this has prompted a lot. Boy, they got a lot of discussion. Essentially, I'll summarize it. You guys are morons. You guys are idiots. You guys should focus on real police work and not waste your time online on Facebook seeing what people are posting. Look what it says here in the middle. Hate crime can be committed when someone uses threatening words or behavior or publications such as social media, which are intended or likely to encourage hatred towards other people. Currently, the law covers the targeting of people in this way on the basis of race, ethnicity, religion, disability, gender identity, or sexual orientation. These crimes are more than just about showing hostility to one person, but stirring up hatred against a whole group of people, regardless of what platform you use. I know what this is. This is fascism, writ large. Now, they'll call Donald Trump a fascist because they're making up a new definition. They're changing the language, is what they're doing. Here in America, this is now in Minnesota, the home of the frozen chosen, they used to say, and Minneapolis encourages snitching on citizens for hate speech with a Sharia hotline. This is in America. That is a Democratic-controlled state. They are fascist. You need to understand, they are coming for you if you don't agree with them. They don't care what the Constitution says. They've thrown in with Sharia law. This is state government-sponsored stuff. See this? To report a hate crime, call 612 or the Department of Justice. I can't make it up. New hotline to report hate crimes. Call 311 from inside Minneapolis. The city of Minneapolis has opened a new hotline for reporting hate crimes, which are harassing behaviors motivated by prejudice. This is really dangerous stuff. But we knew it was coming. You know, one of the real indicators of end times, and I know a lot of people say you can't apply Matthew 24 to the church or anything. Look, I don't buy that. It's Scripture. I remember reading, all Scripture is given by inspiration of God. It's profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for instruction, righteousness. But one of the things in Matthew 24 it talks about is, you'll be hated by all men for my name's sake. Now look, I know the Jews will eventually come to faith in Messiah, but that's at the end of the 70th week. So who are they talking about before that period of time that you'll be hated of all men for my name's sake? I think it's clearly the church. Now, we can argue about how long the church is around during that period or before that period. That's fine. But Jesus told me to be careful about deception 4 times. He warned me that we would be hated of all men for his name's sake. And listen, it's coming. So if you stand up against this stuff, you're a hater. Boy. There's the hate crime. So in London, they have all these things going on. They have a number of terror attacks. And so this discussion took place at the London Council meeting with their Muslim mayor and people on the city council, in London. And just listen to a little bit of this. The first thing he's going to do, he's going to talk about the response, because there was somebody who drove into people at a mosque. That's bad. That's evil. That's wrong. That's probably a terror attack. I would agree with that. But you see what happened is they shift from a certain group causing all these terror attacks to now protecting the group that's causing the terror attacks. It's not a very subtle move, but here's some.
We don't yet know the full motivations behind it, but terrorism is terrorism, no matter the target and regardless of the poisonous ideology behind it. There has been a worrying rise in hate crime, including Islamophobic incidents following the attack at London Bridge. In the 7 days before London Bridge, there were 36 Islamophobic incidents, and in the 7 days after, this rose to 108, an increase of 200%.
And he never defines what an Islamophobic
racist hate crime incidents increased from 311 to 378 incidents, an increase of 21%. These are the incidents reported. Clearly, it's possible some aren't. I want to assure Londoners that the police are taking a zero-tolerance attitude towards hate crime. My message to the victims of hate crime is, please report it. Don't think it's too trivial. Don't think the police won't take it seriously. They will.
Over a dozen people are dead because of Islamic terror attacks. And what's this man concerned about? Reporting a hate crime. Do you understand how deluded you have to be to publicly put yourself out there in that way? I find this maddening to a great degree. This goes on. Let me see if I can move this forward. This is they have a march in London, Al-Quds Day. Hezbollah is banned as a terror group, except they carved out this nifty little distinction. I think the Department of Homeland Affairs or Homeland Secretary, which used to be Theresa May, by the way, and I don't know if it happened when she was there, but the political wing of Hezbollah is okay. We can't ban that. But they put the Hezbollah flag on, which it has a machine gun on it. And they just say, well, this is a political statement, and so it's okay. It's crazy. So there was a discussion about, will you, Mayor, will you go to the Homeland Secretary, I think her name is Reed. I had a clip, but I didn't have time to put it in, of her talking on the floor of House of Commons like, well, we'll look into this. Well, great, thanks. We'll look into whether they should be declared a terrorist group like the United States and a bunch of other countries have already done. So there's a request here by one of the council members would you please write a letter to Homeland Secretary, Mr. Mayor. We've had people dead, their legs, their bodies ripped in two on London Bridge and Westminster in terror attacks. Could you maybe get an organization that backs this banned? We'll see a little bit of his response here. Hang on.
Hezbollah flags are marched through the streets of London. The Hezbollah flag, as you probably know, has a gun, an assault rifle on the front, and it causes great distress and alarm to lots of people. You did mention the loophole that allows it to happen, in that the political wing of Hezbollah is not prescribed as a terrorist organisation, whereas the military wing is. Unlike countries like the United States, Israel, France and the Netherlands, where the whole of Hezbollah is prescribed as a terrorist organisation. Now,
Mr. Mayor, last year you said you acquainted us with the problems that the police have with regard to policing these kinds of demonstrations, and it's not always very easy just to go in and snatch a person who may be displaying an illegal banner. You did, however, at the time say that the police tend to use video and subsequently will prosecute or take further action as required. Could you write to me and let me know what action was taken as a result of last year's Al-Quds March, which you undertook at the time? Could you undertake to do that?
Happy to do so, Chair.
Thank you. With regard to the questions that have already been raised with you, do you understand how difficult it is for the police to make that subtle distinction between what is the political wing and what is the military wing of an organisation that fundamentally, in its core, is a violent organisation?
Well, particularly, I mean, just to give you an example, some of the flag had stapled on them the word political, and so you can appreciate the loopholes that are obviously there, but of course I do.
Do you think that your opinion would assist in the Home Secretary putting into place perhaps a redefinition of what is a banned organisation in order that the police can do their job, do a better job? And I'm sure that it's in your interest, that you want the police to be able to do a better job and have laws and definitions which assist them in doing their job.
Now, who thinks he's going to give a straight answer to that question? This is the English version of the Boy King Up North.
Well, of course, Chair, if the Assembly member wants to send me all the letters he's written and the evidence he has to the Home Secretary, I'll also consider that as well.
You will consider that, but you will write to the Home Secretary to say that this needs clarification?
I'll read all the letters you've written to the Home Secretary and consider whether that gives me the guidance to write to the Home Secretary.
I'm sorry, I'm asking about you, Mr. Mayor. What action will you take with regard to making the job of policing these demonstrations easier for our police officers?
The biggest help I can give to the police in doing their job is to get sufficient resources they need from the government. and that's what I've been doing first and foremost. The more results.
There was a reply about
Like a list of banned organizations. It makes it pretty easy.
2 questions ago, which would have been fine if you just said, yes, I'll do that. But you seem to be avoiding saying, yes, I'll do that. So let's try and readdress it. Will you write to the Home Secretary and say that we need to clarify what is a banned and not banned organisation in order to assist policing such demonstrations in the future? Will you do that?
I'm really happy to read all the correspondence you've sent to the Home Secretary.
Will you
and then
do
decide
that,
what to do.
Mr. Mayor? Will you do that? Don't
really
ask me what I'm doing. I'm asking what you're doing. Will you do that?
I'm really happy to read all the letters you've sent to the Home Secretary and consider whether there's evidence to make the submissions you want me to make.
Will you, Mr. Mayor, look after the interests of the Jewish population of London and write to the Home Secretary to ask for the clarification of the rules on what is a banned organisation?
I've been in close contact with the Met Police Commissioner, and one of the best ways to protect vulnerable Jewish Londoners is to get more resources for the police service. That's what I intend to do. And if you want to join me in that, it makes my life a lot easier.
I will join you when you start doing your job, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for those answers. I'm sure Londoners will be fascinated with your lack of willingness to address this problem.
Well, can I congratulate you on that pre-written rant from you. It's appreciated.
If you want to check, I'll show you. You show me your briefing. I'll show you mine. All right?
Okay.
We'll have a deal on that.
Okay.
Calm down. Just calm down.
Mayor.
You know, there. And so this is The Economist a couple weeks ago. Terror in the internet. Facebook scans for terror using artificial intelligence, because apparently they don't possess common sense already. Boy. And this is from the City of London, Home Office Police Innovation Fund Online Hate Crime Hub. And there's a whole bunch of things there about developing a hate crime reduction strategy for London. How about a strategy for reducing terror attacks in London? Either way that they go. I find this, can I just say, it's shocking. Well, somebody said the mayor is part of it. You know, we can have that discussion. So an online hate crime hub, and now Google. Now I like Google because it helps me find things, but you got to know their results are biased. So they've now posted, you type in fascism and this is what you will get. Okay? Now listen. Fascism noun, fascism plural noun, fascisms. Definition: an authoritarian and nationalistic right-wing system of government and social organization. Synonyms: authoritarianism, totalitarianism, dictatorship, despotism, autocracy. In general use, extreme right-wing, authoritarian, or intolerant views or practice. That is made up. That is a political statement by Google. This is what Merriman Webster says was the definition of fascism. Often capitalized, a political philosophy, movement, or regime such as that of the fascists that exalts nation and often race above the individual and that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation and forcible suppression of opposition, a tendency toward or actual exercise of strong autocratic or dictatorial control. We cannot even agree on the definition of words today. How do you think this is going to end up? Remember Jesus' words. You'll be hated for my name's sake. Why? Because we actually define things as right and wrong. In the Atlantic a year ago, they had this article, when Europe's new, one of the little blurbs in it was, when Europe's new right leaders are called fascists in suits, It's an acknowledgement they are not fully fascist. Real fascists wore uniforms. And they interview a guy, and he hates Trump. His name's Robert Paxton. He wrote a book called The Anatomy of Fascism, and he goes about how it comes about. And even he won't say that Trump is a fascist, although he thinks he's on that way. But I'm saying is, he's not banning speech. He's not saying that everything should be controlled by a central government. And so this is, again, the left always projects. Okay, so when they call other people fascists, why? Because they're fascists. When they call other people intolerant, it's because why? They're intolerant. They call other people's xenophobic, racist, bigots. Why? Because they are. I just don't know how else to say it. We can't even agree on definitions. We're certainly going to have disagreements on politics. There were Al-Quds Day celebrations around, and I hope you see how this fits into sort of the prophetic framework that we're taught will be becoming. A global leader, okay? So these are Al-Quds celebrations. They have these Orthodox, this is, Joan, can I say this is a nutty group, the anti-Zionist Orthodox? I mean, in Israel, they're viewed as nuts, right? Because look where they are. They're with Hezbollah and the Iranians, and they show up in Tehran. The people in Tehran love them. That ought to give you a clue. And here was some other, this was in Iran yesterday, Tehran the other day, the Al-Quds celebration. You know, we're going to take back Jerusalem. Burning American and Jewish flags. Trump with his, sort of his puppets there, the Saudis and Benjamin Netanyahu. There's a good article in the Financial Times recently about why it seems like all the elections now are surprised. The polls are off. We saw it with the congressional thing down in Georgia. And what did the Democrat guy outspent the Republican, what was her name, Karen Handel, very pro-life, Planned Parenthood hater. I mean, it was like 8-1. It was outspent. It was like $40 million spent on that congressional race, the most in history. And it's going to be close. It's going to be a nail biter. And did you see the picture of the people on CNN when the results came in? They're all like, so. And she talks about we're fragmented, untrusting, customized, unstable, and things are just we're going to continue to have an unpredictable world. And she says in her article about why electoral surprises keep rolling in, this will not end soon. And I agree with her. And so we see the recent election with Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn, who I could show you videos of saying, oh yeah, I'm going to go over and have dinner with my Hezbollah friends and breakfast with my Hamas friends. He's a leftist. He likes terrorists. And he'll run around and call people who disagree with him intolerant and a fascist. Now this one, I got my big feet keep hooking onto wires here. Macron. You see the imagery that's projected on the Economist cover? Walking on water. Now, I'm not saying this is the guy, but I do think this is a dangerous person that you need to watch. And in French history, outside of the Islamic world, probably the worst beheaders of people were the progressive French back in the French Revolution. Tens of thousands beheaded at the guillotine. They used it on an industrial scale for 100 years or more. This is in the French history, so history has a tendency to repeat itself. So again, I'm not putting a stamp, the you-know-what stamp on this guy, but I'm saying is you need to watch him. Look at the imagery, though. We saw the one where he was with the pyramid, you know, and the arms like this, and then this with all the front pages. There's a website, I'm not sure completely of its orientation, but I have found some very good articles about current developments. It's called orientalreview.org. And they have a number of articles about Macron. And this is Macron with a sort of a mentor from the older part of France, which the current France they call the Fifth Republic. And, excuse me, I just have to remember where to stand. But back in June 2014, how many of you heard of Emmanuel Macron 3 years ago? Nobody. But he shows, I know, it's like he came out of nowhere, and he shows up with his mentor. And just read this from the Oriental Review. Although it went unnoticed by the public, his campaign actually began back in June 2014. That was when Jacques Attali, the recognized eminence grise of the Fifth Republic, first introduced his young protege at a Bilderberg Club meeting in Copenhagen. Back then, the latter was serving as the Deputy Secretary General to the President of France, but given President Hollande's dismal approval ratings at the time, he, Macron, was advised to distance himself from his boss, which he did, resigning 10 days after returning from Denmark. And this is from a headline on a large law firm that has a practice group in France. The law Macron has taken effect, because after about a year, he became economic minister of the French Fifth Republic of France. And they looked at this law that he was putting in place, and he was supposed to not be part of the socialists and all this stuff. And their assessment of the law on their law firm website, the new changes are not drastically different from current law, but managed to make a complex system even more complex. And they went through these rules about redundancy in employees and how you can fire an employee, but you can't fire him, you have to offer him another position. And you even have to look abroad, but if the employee doesn't want to go abroad, you have to look in. But this is Macron. All about what? Control. It goes on, and this is one of the articles there at Oriental Review, or another, no, I can't remember where I found this one. It was linked at Oriental Review. French elite chose their new pawn, Emmanuel Rochon, former director of Bank Rothschild. The short version is a shocker. On January 25th, the French elite moved to destroy the right-wing candidate, Francois Fillon, with a scandal that may be fake. The elite is clearing the way for their new pawn, Emmanuel Macron, a former director of Bank Rothschild. Macron's misdeeds are revealed here. The dissidents shine an unwanted light on the Macron-Rothschild connection. In return, the elite seem to have forgotten the police to put unspecified arrest charges against the well-known dissident, Alain Soret. Anyway, and this is what it says. Naturally, Macron is a champion of pop futurism. He is going to turn the French into the ideal nomads, a precariat class that has acquired a few skills and some passable English but lacks a steady job, a real salary, and a future. He spins fairy tales for the French young people about the creative class, the dream of a degenerate civilization, but he fails to mention that the society of the future will have no use for all the slackers who voted for him. He is guided by the neoliberal premise that the main task of a declining state is to give its citizens the chance to ceaselessly change and adapt to the infamous global market instead of doing anything at all to protect jobs, decent pensions, and the national interest. Therefore, the May 7 victory is yet another mousy little man that is strenuously programmed by the media may well be the last in the history of the Fifth Republic, and it is certainly no harbinger of the Sixth. France is poised to step into the grave that has already been dug for her. So I can't vouch for everything on the Oriental Review. I can just say that it has some things that we should be sort of looking at. It may be a right-wing it may be a right-wing totalitarian group for all I know, but they do have a very good analysis of some of the things going on with the China Silk Road and the Israel-Greece-Cyprus partnership for gas line to Europe, and some really analysis that I've not seen anywhere else. So let's go through some other stuff real quickly. Good grief, where did the time go? Well, we know that there was a terror attack foiled near the Grand Mosque of Mecca. This is something I just found out about. It was in the Daily Mail this morning, or maybe Friday. Tornado knocks out half the Pentagon's fleet of nuke-proof doomsday planes. Did you hear about this? A tornado out in Omaha at Offutt Air Force Base. They were in hangars, but their tails were sort of hanging out, so they were damaged in a tornado. So two of the big 747 doomsday planes that we have are sort of unoperable right now. That's not good. Then we had this collision in Japan between a container ship and the USS Fitzgerald, which I think is, I don't know if this was an attack, if it was an accident. It certainly seems strange. I think we need to watch further for that. I don't want to speculate too much on what happened. But this is what Macron did. I've got my slides out of order. France to ban oil and gas exploration. In France? No, in every place where France has ever been. The colonial power, except one place. Where could that be? They have an oil gas company called Total, but they're going to go ahead with a major Iran gas project. And that gas project sits here see that red area down there in the Persian Gulf? That's just north of Qatar. We've been hearing a lot about Qatar. That's the Pars oil gas field that is shared by Qatar and another country that sponsors terrorism called Iran. And so the French have gone in and thrown in with them in this project. There's a little bit more of a close-up there. The red area, you see Qatar there. And then if you want to see this with the ethnic breakdown, the dark green is Shia, the light is Sunni. But you see all the Saudi oil wells there along the Persian Gulf are really in Shia areas. So France is throwing in, it looks like, with the Persians, the Iranians, and Qatar. And there's been a lot of back and forth about, is this good or not? Guy Mueller at Gatestone Institute has a good article, Europe Surrenders to Radical Islam. And you need to go read that. I don't have time to go in it. While all this is going on, Trump goes to Saudi Arabia, to Riyadh. He has all the Sunni countries come in, including Qatar. Now, in a couple weeks, that happened while we were in Israel a few weeks ago, and now the Saudis and Qatar and all the other Gulf Sunni states they've banned flights from Qatar, they've cut off border crossings, they cut off land transportation, and there's this big fight going on, this big diplomatic ripple in the Sunni world. And Qatar's appears to be driven more towards Iran than they already are. And look, they're in it because they get a lot of oil and gas money from this Pars field in the Persian Gulf that they share. I don't know. 10 more minutes, I guess. Maybe. John Bolton came out and said this, the two-state solution is not viable anymore. I think he agrees. Now, I'm going to have to go back. This was when Trump was in Israel. And as you go into Bethlehem, this was what an electronic billboard said when Trump was there. The city of peace welcomes the man of peace. Now, I think I saw that in person, but I don't remember specifically. But I did, when I was doing my research in Israel, I did come across this, and I've been sort of saving it. Because we've had this push, and this was in the Wall Street Journal. First big article about Israel gives aid cash to rebels in Syria. Israel's saying that's not true. It's very, very complicated because, you know, the U.S. doesn't like the Assad regime, so we give some money to rebels. How big a group they are and where they're located along the Golan border, how much we can help them overthrow the Assad regime is questionable. I don't know that there are not enough of them and they're not trained very well. Then we have, but then everybody seems to be fighting ISIS. But then people say, well, we're supporting ISIS. Well, maybe we're only supporting. It's very complicated who's supporting who. Israel has denied this report. But the other part of it is here, Kushner plans trip to Middle East. This was a headline a few days ago. And it said, remember that a forging of this historic peace agreement will take time, and to the extent that there is progress, there are likely to be many visits by both Mr. Kushner and Mr. Greenblatt, who you see in the video right there, and there's Jared Kushner, sometimes together and sometimes separately to the region, the official said, and possibly many trips to Israeli and Palestinian negotiators to the Washington, D.C. or other locations as they pursue substantive talks. And so there's Kushner with Netanyahu, who he's known a long time, ever since he was a child. Kushner went and met with Abbas, and Abbas was, supposedly Kushner told him, you can't pay terrorists anymore, stop the monthly income to the survivors of these suicide bombers, and Abbas was livid. And so the report in the Jerusalem Post this morning was, Trump's team runs into the shoals of Mideast reality. And that's probably true. So the Trump team, there's reports then, Trump's going to withdraw from doing anything with the Middle East. The White House and State Department have come out and said, no, that's not true. We're still involved in the peace process. It's the same old regurgitation of things that we've been talking about for a lot of time. So they put out a press release yesterday, or a couple days ago, about, you know, Kushner, Greenblatt, and David Friedman's meeting, and talked about that there's a statement in here where they acknowledge the reality that the United States officials and Israeli leadership underscored that forging peace will take time and stressed the importance of doing everything possible to create an environment conducive to peacemaking. So, you know, everybody on Christian Facebook and social media is, oh, Jared Kushner's the Antichrist, Donald Trump's the Antichrist, and all that. So, look, let's see how this plays out. Emmanuel Macron is the Antichrist. You know, everybody's got the pin to tail on the Antichrist thing out right now. And I think we need to be a little bit careful. I'll do this and one other thing. So, you know what I ought to do is I ought to just do like 4 hours, and then Brian will work his magic and compress it down to like 15 minutes. You know, and you'll just have to learn to listen fast. You know, it'd be good training for you. Because things are going to happen really fast, and you need to learn how to listen faster. Hezbollah leader threatens next war could draw fighters from Iran, Iraq, and Pakistan. Very interesting. There was a conference in. Joan will correct me if I'm wrong. It was the. Where did I see the name for this? Herzliya conference. Herzliya. I don't know how you say it. It's a security conference that they have each year, and they had it this last week, and they had the head of the IDF, General Eisenkot. I don't know. I'm saying it the American way. And I found when we were in Israel, by the way, that regardless of how you pronounce a Hebrew word, somebody will always tell you there's an alternative pronunciation. So that's my assessment of how things went with my trying to say these words. And then the commander of the Israeli Air Force got up, and they were talking about this war that's coming in Lebanon. This is the Israeli Air Force commander. And that they think there's another war coming. There's 130,000 rockets that Hezbollah has. They've been paying people to put them in their apartments and their houses. And so this guy got up at the conference to talk about how we're prepared. So to give you an idea, Pam and I actually, we drove up here up Route 90, then we went up 92 around the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee, and then we went up to the border near Kenitra. And there was some place in there I turned down a road and I kind of ended up like at a gate that I think went into no man's land. So I backed, I thought, it's probably not a good place to be. I'm pretty intuitive that way. And so we drove, and then we drove up from Kenitra, we drove up to Majal al-Shams, and you can see if you look at the 99 there by Dan, and you go sort of up to your right a little bit, that's Mount Hermon. That goes up to a little under 10,000 feet above sea level. It's very mountainous. So we came down by there at Dan. There's the Tell at Dan, which is a great place to go. And then Caesarea Philippi is there, sort of in the area of that 99. And then we drove along the road there, along this mountain range, up over this mountain range. It was very much like driving over the mountains in California, the coastal mountains in California, all the way down to Nahariya, which is over here by where you see 4 and 70 on the Mediterranean coast. So we were along that border, and there's a big war that's coming along that border. And I will tell you, there's a lot of people that live along that border in Israel, and they've been practicing evacuating them because of what will happen in a war. And as our friends in Nahariya told us during dinner, like, if they start throwing rockets here, you know, it's a 6-minute drive from here to the Lebanon border. I mean, how much of a chance do you think we'll have to get away from a rocket? So, I mean, this is really, another one of those epicenters that we talk about the conflict. And this is Hezbollah, and this is what everybody's talking about. And I don't have time. You can go and you can look up the Herzliya conference, and you can get this man's, the head of the Israeli Air Force, and he talks about, we're ready. We're ready. It's a fascinating talk. Brian, I'll try to give you a link so you can put it in the description under the video. But he talked about, we're ready. And while we were sort of taken back in 2006, we've really prepared, and we've analyzed things, and we've looked at things, and we're ready to deal with the situation. And he said, and he was speaking in Hebrew, so you have to trust the translator and the closed captioning. Essentially, he said this: we're ready, and we're going to take care of this in 48 to 60 hours. And we have quantitative and qualitative improvements that we've made that people don't understand what we're ready to do, mainly from an aerial standpoint. And they spell aerial in the captionings, A-R-I-E-L. It means aerial from the Air Force. And near the end of this talk, he talks about it will be something you've never seen before. Now, I don't know what he's talking about. I'm just saying, go look at it for yourself, because I just found it this morning. Haven't had a chance to analyze it. Maybe I'll analyze it and try to get a transcript from the closed captioning. But it was a fascinating talk. And I think you should go listen to it. The head of the Israeli Air Force. Because they know, what did they know? They know war is coming. And they've been preparing for it. Because they don't have a lot of options. They've got a lot of people that live along that Lebanon border. There's a town there, they've got like a gas stations like we have, and like Walmarts and shopping centers, and a water park right there. I remember driving by the water park. I say gas stations. They're not like our gas stations, because I know how to use a gas pump in America. I don't know how to use one in Israel. I actually called 2 friends who live in Israel. Hey, how do you pump gas? Don't know. I just got a car last week, one of them said, and I haven't had to fill it up yet. You've lived here 5 years. So I haven't had to fill up a gas car. The other person, you've lived here 10 years. I go to the full serve. Well, there was no full serve at this place. It was very frustrating. So then I went over to my friend in Naria, and he said, I'll take you. I said, would you please take me over to the station? And we went over, and he looked at the thing and said, I've never seen one like this before. The guy will probably, if you just leave your credit card in there, he'll let you pump. And which he did. But it's like, I still don't know how to use it. Everything's in Hebrew. Anyway. I mean, everything. I did figure out that's diesel, and you don't want to put that in your car. But this is a heavily populated area. This is a lot of stuff is going to go on here. And they're ready for it. And you should listen to him. It starts about 13 minutes in is where he gets to kind of the meat of his talk. Israel furious as UN set to host 50 years of Israeli occupation event. ISIS blew up a historic mosque in Mosul. Attacks in Pakistan. Secretary General comes out with this. I think I'll throw this in next week. Or if I have time to do a little midweek thing about some of the things went on in early June with Nikki Haley and the UN. UN came out and said, oh, this is terrible, Israel's occupying, and Nikki Haley went to the UN Human Rights Council and really let them have it. She did another talk while she was there in Switzerland. Then she went to Israel, and everybody loved her in Israel because she took a really strong stand, even stronger than the president has about pro-Israel statements. So I have some video of that, and I'll play that next week. So listen, folks. This was a tough one because there was so much. And I don't want to just give you a machine gun approach. I like to explain it a little bit more. So I hope it made sense, but we live in a very, very diluted world. Is the only way I could say it. It's global. It's everywhere. And just, it doesn't change. But deal with it. Know that this is, it should strengthen your faith because the Bible told us it would get like this. And it is like this. So praise the Lord. The Bible's proving true. So let's pray. Father, thank you so much for your word. Lord, pray that you will steel our minds and hearts as we go this week. Fill us with your spirit to stand boldly for the truth of the gospel and the word of God, unwavering in the face of opposition. And help us realize that this is a really blessed time to be alive, to see all of these things unfolding in front of us. Bless us this week. In Jesus' name, amen.